So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. We're happy you're here with us for about an hour or so. Thank you for those of you who are joining through Zoom. We're hoping also that this will go on Facebook Live, but while we're figuring that out, know that we're recording this so that if you know someone who wanted to be here but couldn't, we'll have the recording ready to share out with everybody afterwards. So thank you for being here for Hip Hop to Hamilton, Making Art Work. We're going to be talking about how the arts community has been affected by the COVID-19 crisis and how it's affected our young artists today, our students who might be pursuing careers in the arts but are worried about what the future might hold. And so I want to introduce some people to you quickly. First, I want to introduce my co-host, Jennifer Miller. She's my colleague at the Asian Art Museum. And she'll be handling all the tech needs today. I'm so grateful to Jennifer for just making sure this show runs smoothly. I also would love to introduce Khafre Jay from Hip Hop for Change. He's the Executive Director of Hip Hop for Change. Welcome, Khafre. I also want to
having me.
Yep. Great. And then Lily Ling, who is the Music Director and Conductor for the Peggy North American Tour of Hamilton.
Hi everybody.
Okay, we also have two students with us. Ava Sosnoff is a senior from Oakland School for the Arts. Ava, let's say hello.
Hi.
She's a senior there. And then we have Sophia Shen, who is a junior at Lowell High School. Thanks for being here, Sophia.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Great. Okay, so first off, I want to say that this event is an outgrowth of the SFUSD Student Arts Festival, which we unfortunately couldn't hold this year because of the shelter-in-place order. And we want to thank Alaska Airlines, who is our major sponsor for that festival, and for their support as we were preparing for the festival and our, accommodations since then because of the COVID-19 crisis. And we want to let everybody know that we're hopeful that some of the events that would have taken place during the festival this spring will eventually happen in the fall when we can all get back together. So thank you again to Alaska Airlines. And here's a quick overview of what's going to happen today. So first, Khafre, Lily, and I are going to have a conversation about their work as artists, their path to becoming the artists who they are now. And then we're going to switch gears and have Ava and Sophia talk with Khafre and Lily and share their thoughts as students, what's on their minds, especially as we look towards the future and the long-term effects of this crisis. And then finally, at the end, we're going to have a Q&A. So please feel free to comment in the chat and to send in questions through the Q&A. Jennifer's going to be monitoring all of that so that at the end we can take your questions and have more of a conversation. Okay, a couple ground rules. Please stay on mute if you're not a panelist so that there's no feedback or echo during the conversation. And otherwise, just please participate through chat and through the Q&A and through our polls. We're going to be running some polls throughout the evening. And our first poll is going to happen right now. So Jennifer's going to put up poll number 1 to see who's here with us today. So I'm going to give you about 15 seconds to take this poll. And if you're wondering which one to choose because there's overlap for you, you're both a parent and an arts professional, pick the one that fits why you're here watching this webinar today. And if there's another, category, add it to the chat so we can follow up. So I'm going to count down 5 seconds now. We're going to take the poll down. 5, 4.
Oh, we still
3.
have some people still filling in if I might. Almost everyone has filled it in.
Okay, thanks. So I can wait a few more seconds. What do you see, Jennifer?
Okay, I think we can end that poll now.
Okay, great. Let's see the results. All right, our biggest group of people in the audience are teachers, 30%, then art supporters. Oh, there's one parent here, I guess, or one person who identifies as a parent for this webinar because, people had to choose one category, so there might be overlap, but a few students, which is great. Awesome. Anything in the other category from the chat that we can see?
We did get one teacher we have another teacher. Casey's a teacher here as well. So we got 26 teachers.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thanks. We're going to put more polls up later today, but it's great to see a cross section of people here. Thanks for being here with us. So let's start talking, Khafre, Lily, and I, about how they became the artists they are today. So before the COVID-19 crisis hit, what were you doing for your work? And we can start with Lily. What does it mean to be a music director? What does that work entail? And then how did you get to this point? You know, what was your path to becoming music director of Hamilton?
Thanks, Margaret, for having me here. And for my work, so I am the music director and the conductor for Hamilton. So for the right now, the San Francisco company, and it's called Peggy. And I like to think that anything that you hear with music and sound, I work with our sound department. I conduct the show. I teach the music to the cast, and so it's a lot of just making sure that the product is exactly what the audience sees every day. And so yeah, that's what I do for Hamilton. In terms of my path, I was born in China and actually grew up in Canada, so I'm an immigrant. And I have done classical music all my life. I went to school, my undergrad, for classical piano, but I was really lucky to have just been exposed to a lot of theater. There's a really healthy theater scene in Toronto, and its proximity to New York. So I've been very lucky to do that. I've had a chance to work in New York. I got a chance to conduct Lion King in Mandarin in Shanghai. And then after that, I was very lucky to have met some people and have been doing Hamilton since. So that's kind of my origin story.
Mm-hmm. And were there any mentors or important figures in that path who really helped guide you towards this career? Or were there important moments that sort of, you know, made you so clear to yourself that you wanted to take this path?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it was very interesting because my undergrad, I did 5 years, and my first year was actually in pre-med. My mother wanted me to be a doctor, and an aunt of mine who was actually a piano teacher, she actually said a couple of months in, she saw how unhappy I was, and so she encouraged me. So I really thank her for seeking out the piano teacher that I had and to take some lessons. And yeah, every music director, every conductor that I've ever had a chance to work with have been instrumental in my life. I think I've learned the good and the bad from everyone that I've had a chance to work with. You know, to be honest, the people I'm very thankful for my parents, because if they hadn't given up their lives in China, and you know, my dad left right before Tiananmen happened. So if they hadn't left to give me the life that I have now and to give me the education, I wouldn't be here. So yeah, many, many people.
Yeah, and I can totally identify with the pre-med, but then switched gears story. Yes. So Khafre, how about you? Can you tell us about what you do, what you would be doing if this crisis hadn't hit, and how did you get to this point in your career?
Yeah, I'd love to. What I do is I build a base of self-determination for hip hop culture and hip hop cultural expression and education in the Bay Area and hopefully in the future around the world. I grew up in Hunters Point, San Francisco as a Black man, and you know, especially in the 90s, my culture is hip hop. So I was rapping before I really knew what rapping really meant to me, you know what I'm saying? I think the reason why I do hip hop for change, or the reason why I started this, is because you know, when I was a young teenager, I was rapping about, you know, clothes, cars, and girls that I didn't have, and all the stuff that I saw in mainstream media, and I was really good at it, you know. I was trying to find my sense of strength, you know what I'm saying, as a young Black man. But I was being bombarded with what corporate media tells, you know, what corporate media sells about who we are as young brown people, as hip hop folks. And right now we have 3 corporations that own about 90% of what we get to see within hip hop expression. It doesn't mean that's what hip hop is. It means that's what they put out there. And, you know, because they're trying to sell and make the most money and sell the most units, they have to make safe bets. And in America, that's sex, drugs, and violence. So we have a real big consolidation of that. And, you know, when I started finding, you know, my real sense of activism is when my narrative started changing. So I'm now rapping about my community. I'm rapping about police brutality. I'm rapping about environmental injustices in my community. And all of a sudden, I don't have a career anymore. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I'm no longer going to get booked at these big paying shows. And it's just sad when I see the bulk of what hip hop is to me. You know, those people from the community, they're rapping about empowerment. They got the beautiful narratives, but our shows are so underfunded that nobody sees it. And it's hard for us to make an economic base, you know, and make it in life through our music. You know, it might be really easy to do it in other forms, but not hip hop. So I kind of started Hip Hop for Change out of sheer frustration. You know, and I cut my teeth as an activist at Greenpeace, doing grassroots fundraising and organizing. And after I stopped working for there, I just had this idea that if I could teach 15 to 20 folks like myself who have all this hustle, all this business acumen to get out there on Hate Street and move CDs and mixtapes like I used to do, then we could create an economic base that could, you know, fund our shows, and we could, you know, get artists paid who have the narratives that our kids really need, because whoever controls the narratives our kids have access to is pretty much God in the community. And right now, that's 3 companies that don't care about us. They make about 70% of their money from suburban white men between 18 and 24 who are buying an extra communal narrative. And they buy what they believe, and what they believe about us isn't who we are. So especially for kids who are hip hop, white, black, whatever, if your culture is hip hop, you need to have access to a positive, you know, image of who you can be, not just sex, drugs, and violence that, you know, corporate media is making money off of. So, you know, I do this because, you know, me and my community need to be able to make it. And we need to be able to make it being ourselves. We don't need a code switch. We don't need to change. We need to be able to break dance and rap and DJ and find our worth through our own expression. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. And were there mentors or certain people who stuck out during your path who helped you get to where you are now?
Yeah, you know, nobody's raised in a vacuum, and nobody does anything new. Shout out to my parents, you know, for, you know, keeping me grounded and understanding what privilege and oppression is from an early age, so I can have a good head on my shoulders, and keeping me focused and grounded in my artistic expression. You know, my dad's an actor and a singer and a director and a writer and whatnot. He had me in choir and singing and all this good stuff. So shout out to him first and foremost. And I think my other mentor was Hunters Point, San Francisco. It was San Francisco, this really builded city, you know, and the city that everybody sees, but nobody really cares about us over there on the southeast side, or in Hunters Point or Double Rock or Sunnydale. You know, I think my biggest mentor was moving from Hunters Point and catching the 44 or the 54 out of my community to see everybody else, and then see what they think about us when we drive back and go back to our community. So my biggest mentor was the juxtaposition of my community versus where I had to go every day outside my community to get all the resources like education, healthcare, whatnot. You know, everybody in San Francisco has that one time they went through Hunters Point. So people don't really know who we are, but we always have to go outside our community for stuff. So I think the disparities that we see in San Francisco were my biggest mentor. Next to my dad and mom. How y'all doing?
Well, I'm glad you brought up community, because that's the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is how the COVID-19 crisis has hit your communities, the arts community and your personal communities. Lily, do you mind starting us off with that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So and I think it was a great thing with the city of San Francisco, but our company was the first company across North America to be shut down. We were shut down before Broadway. And I think it was really great because, you know, as time was progressing, both actors, the company, and also we didn't feel the audience were safe. So we have been out of commission since March 11th. And it's been hard for some people and better for others. Some people isolate better than others. But yeah, it's been hard because it's across the board. And the one thing that has been really great that's come out of it is there has been education initiatives that's come up. So people who are interested in Hamilton or in musical theater, for example, with Lion King, they have come up with at-home education for younger children. And then there's something called EduHam, which has happened with all Hamilton communities where high school kids from across different cities, but depending on where the tours and what cities they've landed, have actually invited all these kids to come see the show, a performance, and then they themselves learn about history, and then they present it in front of thousands of kids. So they've actually just very recently moved that online. And so there's been initiative to try and do that, but it's been very hard because for all artists across the board, you know, the power in live performance arts, dance, theater, orchestra is the power of assembly. For us, it's the idea of not only are we performing, but we're interacting with the audience, and the audience within itself is a living organism. So when you can't assemble and you can't do that, even though people are doing Zoom readings, and it's been really great because they're raising money. One of the things that I'm excited about is Parks and Rec are doing a reading on Thursday of a new episode. They're doing things like that, but it doesn't, you can't replace the live aspect and the assembly of the audience and the interaction that we get.
Right. As wonderful as Zoom is, it's just not the same. It's just not the same as being in the room together. And Khafre, how about your work? How has your work been changed by this crisis and your community been impacted?
You know, I'm a perpetual optimist, but about the first week of March, it was really hitting us. A friend of mine, Marcelo, he said, "Hey, just watch. Next week it's over," and he was right. You know, Hip Hop for Change, we're built on a grassroots street activism model. So we employ people from the community to get out there and have cross-cultural conversations in affluent neighborhoods about the co-optation of hip hop. We're able to give people jobs that way, and you know that is really unsafe to do right now. So unfortunately, we had to furlough our entire staff, and that's as hard is. We lost every single education contract the same week, and we lost all our shows in the same week as well. You know, the one with the Asian Art Museum and the SFUSD, and so it was very tough. It was very tough, especially trying to, you know, walk our staff through getting unemployment, things like that. And that's just Hip Hop for Change. I mean, our community is reeling right now, you know, for people who are DJs, like, what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? For rappers, what are you going to do? Everybody literally has lost the entirety of their income, especially from the arts. So right now we are doing the hard pivot, you know. Fortunately, we have enough of a community to support us trying to pivot, and what that's looking like is really fundraising hard. We have a fundraiser on our website at hiphopforchange.org, and that money is going to go purely towards trying to pay some of these local artist educators that we can't employ to actually create video content for online education, thing that we're producing for kids, so we can still, you know, service some of these students that are still in classes, some of these schools that need it, and, you know, most importantly, help these artist educators still provide for their families. So we are just fundraising, and hopefully we can hire some of our grassroots staff back with some of those funds to produce training videos, so we can have a better training regimen when this is all over. But, you know, that's all we're doing right now. We're just trying to get people to remember that artists need you. You know, there's unemployment for, you know, certain people, but I think arts are essential. Arts creates imagination that can allow you to think about the next vaccine or the next big invention, you know. So we have to keep investing in our artists, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to, you know, remind people we're here. We're essential. So
yeah, you said it's a give and take, right? That the artists need everybody to support them, but everybody needs the artists too.
Yes. And you know, I see people doing Zoom stuff. You know, we just had the RZA and DJ Premier do a battle online. That was great for the culture. But a lot of our local smaller artists, you know, they're doing their Zoom things, and I'm not sure how much financial efficacy they're getting with that. But yeah, you know, that's what we're trying to just, you know, point ourselves towards, is just getting some support for people in our community. So feel free to go to hiphopforchange.org and support, yes, if you want.
I also want to talk about how communities of color have been especially hard hit by the coronavirus crisis. and how there have been adverse effects, especially for people of color. Just yesterday, my son and I were walking down the street. We had our masks on, and there was a car parked next to the sidewalk. And as we walked by, the person in the car rolled up their window. And I don't know, it's just because of the racism that's going on right now against Asians. We just had to second guess it. Like, it could have been nothing. It could have had nothing to do with the fact that we were, walking by right at that moment, but we couldn't help but wonder. Lily, can you share any thoughts on what we're seeing right now with the rise in anti-Asian hate crimes and the prejudice that's come out or resurfaced because of the virus?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you're saying. I remember when everything started shutting down and people weren't advocating for masks. I was scared to put on a mask because most people weren't. So, there's that prejudice that people have against you. And it's very, I have been on this continent since I was 7.5, and this is really the first time I felt kind of unsafe or unwanted. But I will say that I feel like we are so lucky to be in a place like San Francisco where there is such a healthy community, not just Asian community, but like across all spectrums, where people are used to, one, really seeing people of different colors, and then also just being a bit more clear-minded about the news that's coming out and what to believe and what not to believe. So I think that's lovely and that's wonderful. And the thing that has really made me think about for us as the Asian community, feeling that like we're being discriminated against, is it's the idea that the different communities, the Black community, Latino community, the Muslim community, that when we are being targeted, we feel it, but what we need to do is then all talk to each other and have empathy for each other, because really it's all the same thing. It's a different time, a different place, 9/11, and for the Black community, it's the history of the country, but it's all of us really being empathetic for each other, having an understanding, and just speaking to each other a lot more, rather than, right now the xenophobia is that we end up going back and retreating to our communities, and it's about opening our hearts and talking to each other.
No, that's a great point, because minority groups are often pitted against each other to serve the people in power, and minority groups are used as scapegoats. And if we could all support each other through all this, then hopefully the people in power will see that's just not going to keep this country moving forward. So Khafre, do you have thoughts to share about the way, especially the African American community, has been affected by the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes, just kind of mirroring what Lily said, I too am afraid to wear a mask. I do, because I don't want to bring it back to my family or my parents or whatnot. But, Fred Hampton said, you don't fight racism with racism, you fight it with solidarity. You know what I'm saying? So I just hope that this whole kind of moment is at least amongst allies, amongst people fighting for, their own people, that we can see that we have a lot more in common, and that, white supremacy really does pit us against each other. Our struggles are pretty the same, but, within the Black community, it's especially tense, because not only do we have an understandable distrust of the healthcare system, going back to when the healthcare system was created on the backs of our bodies, you know what I'm saying? But we also have a current distrust of it. I mean, look at the mortality for Black women in childbirth. It shouldn't be 3 times higher. We have to fight just to be believed when we go to a hospital. I had the same experience last time I was in a hospital. You shouldn't have to feel like a criminal for asking for pain medication, for example, and I shouldn't have to feel like people are going to be extra scared of me because I'm wearing a mask. And that's just dealing with how people take us. I mean, the fact that we have a lot of health disparities just because, our social status is exacerbating a lot of this. And we hear people like the Surgeon General and most recently Van Jones, which surprised me, say, Black people need to stop taking so many drugs or whatnot. Black people don't even do the most drugs per capita. We don't have an extra problem like that. I think people are finding all these ways to make people of color responsible for the things that we go through, instead of really just highlighting the problems we've had in this nation's history since this nation's inception. It is literally built and it's working perfectly, you know, to not enfranchise brown and black people, indigenous people. So we have a distrust of the system. And I see that especially with some of my brothers and sisters worrying about 5G and whatnot and this and that, you know, some of that stuff is hard to look at, you know what I'm saying? But I see that more importantly in just people being afraid that, you know, not only is this government not supportive of, you know, the effort to make sure we don't die from this, but we also have an extra, you know, extra thing against us, just being a black person trying to access care, you know what I'm saying? So this is just another affirmation that the system wasn't built for us, you know, and it's something that I hope, you know, I hope we can be more comfortable with people wearing masks after this. I hope we can be more empathetic. I hope that we can see who's essential in our economy, and I hope we can see whose jobs are predominantly essential amongst the racial demographics. I hope we can see that the CDC not taking racial demographic information was probably by design at first, because certain people don't want to look bad during certain election times, you know what I'm saying? But there's so many issues. You cannot sugarcoat, you know, the inept response to this crisis. You cannot sugarcoat the racial disparities in this crisis. You cannot dispute the patriarchal disparities, and I bet you're going to see that when we get the right numbers. So I hope that data prevails. I hope that we get hard facts, and I hope that those facts make it easy for us to politically and socially fight in the future, because we cannot go back to where we were. You know, we just can't. And I'm glad that everybody else is uncomfortable now too, because people like me have been uncomfortable for the whole time this country has been around. So welcome to the fight, y'all. Let's do it. Let's go. And for certain communities, like, I just want to throw this out here. You know, we've had a lot of issues against, you know, Asian community in the last few months in San Francisco. But we've been organizing around this. You know, Hip Hop for Change had a rally with a lot of the Chinese community leaders in Hunters Point, San Francisco, to address some of these disparities. So, you know, I know a lot of people are highlighting the racism out there. I want to highlight the solidarity out there, because there are people that are fighting to make sure that we know that we have a history of working together as black and brown. And I don't want to say yellow, but, you know, yellow peril, you know, black, you know, power, yellow peril. This is not new. You know, ever since the Black Panthers went over and talked to Chairman Mao, you know, we have more in common than we have apart. And all the systems of oppression we're facing individually, we're facing together. And if we come together, there's nothing that can stop us.
Well, that's an important reminder that people have been working together, but unfortunately the negative stuff gets all the attention. So we need to focus on the positive.
Yeah.
And one group that's, you know, trying to focus on the positive are our young people today, though it's hard with what's going on in the world right now. And we're going to be moving to our student portion of the conversation. And Jennifer's going to put up another poll right now while we're getting ready for the students to ask their questions. And this is a question for the students in the audience. So if you're a student considering a career in the arts, which field are you pursuing? Okay. Can I give it 5 seconds? Jennifer, does it look like it's
Give it 5 more seconds? Yeah.
okay?
So at 35, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, time's up.
Okay, let's see the results. Oh, wow, the majority of the students here are musicians. Wow.
I'm gonna imagine they're all hip hoppers. I'm just gonna imagine that.
Followed by literary artists. Oh no, followed by the visual arts, and then the literary artists, and then theater, and then dance, and then other. Did we get any others in the chat?
Yeah, if you want to add the other in the chat for for whoever filled that out, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, great. Maybe that'll come in while people are getting into the chat maybe. But in the meantime, I wanna talk briefly about Art Speak, which is this great teen internship at the Asian Art Museum run by Triana Patel, who is the manager of youth and family programs at the museum. And it's a year-long paid internship for high school students at public high schools. And if you want to check out what Art Speak's all about, Jennifer is going to put the link to their webpage in the chat. So later on, you can learn more about it. But for now, I want to welcome both Ava and Sophia into the conversation and have them switch off asking questions to Khafre and Lily to hear the student point of view, what's on their minds, what their hopes and fears are. So Ava, do you mind starting us off?
Yeah, so my name is Ava. I'm a senior at Oakland School for the Arts, and my emphasis is in visual arts. And I just wanted to ask, how do you both maintain motivation to do your work and art amid the pandemic? And can you give any tips or encouragements?
Khafre, me?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for anybody is, well, not even say for anybody, but for myself is a plan, you know, planner, a calendar. Google Calendar is my life-saving like app that helps me and keeps me on point. For me, you know, I think it's the reason why I was even able to start Hip Hop for Change is because I got my scheduling down. And I think that's especially necessary around this time. You know, some people I've been hearing out there are forgetting to take showers and brush their teeth and stuff. So especially during the shelter in place time, put a calendar down. You know, I think it's really essential to prioritize creativity like we prioritize making money for rent. You know what I'm saying? Life, there's only one that we have, or so they say. And we need that creativity. We need that inspirational time and that time to focus on it. So I would block out some time each week towards creation.
One thing that I think is really important is to not force it. I think there is a lot of underlying anxiety that we are not talking about a lot, or maybe there is, you know, on TikTok and like Instagram stories, but there is a lot of anxiety, and you can't create when there's anxiety. So kind of on the same vein as what Khafre was saying is that I think we need to create even within that almost a schedule for yourself so that you have time where you want to dedicate to that. But also there's so much, I think at the beginning of the pandemic, I saw so many people talking about, oh, this is the time to write your new musical. This is the time to do this and do that. And we're very lucky we have these company-wide Zoom meetings. And so Lynn, my mom, Miranda joins us. And I think the first week, one thing Lynn said was, you know, everybody expects him to be writing the new Hamilton, except he's so busy homeschooling his kids that like just doing that is already so busy that he's not doing any of that. So the idea is to take the pressure off. If you feel inspired, if something has happened, if you read something in the news through today's chat, if anything on TV has inspired you, do something, write something down, but don't feel the pressure to have to create something. Because I think with anxiety, with the pressure to do it, that's when it's hard, that's when you get blocked. You never know what you are going to be inspired by. So just, I think it's the idea of kind of letting go to create.
So Sophia, do you have a question?
Yeah. Just to introduce myself, I'm Sophia. I'm a junior at Lowell High School, and I mostly focus on music. So one of the things I've been noticing during this time is some concerts have moved online, or like Lily, you were saying, your company-wide Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So I was wondering, do you think this crisis will open up lasting new spaces for artists, like online forums or webinars like this? And also, what opportunities can this situation create for art based on themes of isolation and introspection?
I think it's great that people are using technology to create more things for themselves. As I was saying before, there is no replacement for the assembly and the live aspect of everything. You know, we could all be watching the same movie, but it's not going to be the same unless we're all in the room when the entire room is breathing together. With that being said, I think it is great. You know, I have people everybody's just pivoting, you know, what Khafre was saying before. And as an example, I have a friend who wrote a musical, and we were working on different versions of it. And he just came up with the idea to do a radio play. So what does that all mean? And I think so utilizing technology and then, you know, kind of pivoting and how to get your material out there, I think it's great that we have these resources. But I think the other thing to actually talk about as performing artists and as artists is the idea of, and really starting the conversation about what is more important. You know, is it the buildings and the companies, or the people who make up the companies and the buildings? And you know, the how much artists are actually being paid and what is their worth. I think that is one thing, because there are so many artists who are furloughed, who are out of work, and what does that mean? And you know, what is art worth? And I think that is a worthwhile conversation to have.
For me, you know, I do see a lot of our artists going online, you know, I love actually doing conferences with my parents now. So, you know, a lot of people who haven't really used technology for their work or their creativity, or even just communicating and being social, a lot of people are digging into new stuff. You know, I think Hip Hop for Change, we've been thinking about an online platform for a long time, and we really had to push hard to get this going. And so that's one positive. But I think the most important thing right now is a conversation needs to be had about access to technology and access to internet. And we're talking about what's essential, you know what I'm saying? What's essential? Is it electricity? Is it water, right? You know what I'm saying? People need to have water, but I think more and more people need to have Wi-Fi. You know, we're asking students to do distance learning right now. Doesn't work, right? It's not gonna work in some hoods. It's not gonna work in the middle of Idaho. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not economically feasible to put 5G out there, or, you know, even 4G. So who pays for that? Who pays for these essential services to be given? You know, if healthcare is a right, then you know, education should be a right. And there's a huge conversation around equity there. You know, for example, we're right now working for our education platform because schools still want this. But what about our underserved students? So we're going to make sure that our curriculum, of course, is free to underserved students and free to people who need it. But that's just us, and we think like that naturally as a 501c3 in education. But I don't think that our you know, I mean, maybe Gavin Newsom, you know what I'm saying? But I don't think a lot of governors and a lot of, you know, I don't think 45 is, you know, thinking of kids in rural America right now and getting them high-speed internet immediately. You know what I'm saying? The fact that we were just able to write a check for $6 trillion so fast not only tells me we can get across reparations, but we could also fix our infrastructure. You know what I'm saying? We can do it at the drop of a hat, and we could actually invest in, you know, just education. And maybe 30 years from now, our kids won't be, you know, so behind as they are right now. So I think that's the conversation that I'm hoping, you know, happens. And you know, I don't know if I can say I'm optimistic around that, because we have a certain track record in this country, but I am I am hopeful, and I'm hopeful that there's, you know, cool organizations that are really focused in that conversation if our government and our public entities are.
Deb just said in the chat, I heard KQED was planning to broadcast instruction for SFUSD. So that would be cool if kids could get their instruction through TV, which is more accessible. But yeah, you're talking a lot about the shift in priorities our country needs to make, and it's so slow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sophia, did you have a follow-up to anything Lily or Khafre said in this first portion? Nope. Or Ava, any follow-up to what they said in this first portion before you move on to your second question?
No, I just wanted to say that I agree with a lot of what Khafre said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead and share your second question.
Yeah, so the arts are often considered the first to go and the last to return in catastrophic circumstances like these. Do you agree with this statement, and how does it make you feel?
I completely disagree. I think if you look at exactly how everybody is turning to TikTok, turning to Instagram Live, and doing all those things to express themselves, that is the arts. Spotify, Hulu, Disney Plus, all of that is the arts. Everything, we're surrounded by the arts, and people, they need to listen to music. They, you know, we have certain things that make us just feel better, you know, and so that is really important. And I think right now, the thing that is making people feel better is the ability to create and to be able to express themselves. And all of that is considered the arts. And I think that is something to, you know, with the education system to talk about, which is that what is the arts and what kind of good can the performing arts bring? Because it does feel empathy, it feels critical thinking. And that is something that we are sorely, sorely in need of right now.
Just to piggyback off of that, I think that's probably why TikTok and Instagram and platforms like this are as popular as they are. And I think that is because, you know, our education system has not prioritized art. You know, it is really, really important for us to value how our kids create imagination. You know what I'm saying? How they create creativity, how we invest in that, so they can be really great scientists who think of groundbreaking things like the theory of relativity, right? You know, that's so important. And yeah, arts is always the first thing to go. Uh, and 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 I think that's critical, especially for kids in situations where, you know, they don't have, you know, the most property taxes in their neighborhood. So their schools are underinvested because certain schools have all the crayons. You know, they got all the black crayons you ever want to use, right? But certain schools, that black crayon is the first crayon to go. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I love hip hop so much, because it costs nothing for me to beatbox or break dance. You know, it costs a little bit to get some turntables. I'll throw that out there. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I think for the most part, a lot of these expressions are just so necessary for kids to find out how they feel about things, to find out their own sense of positive identity. And if you look at certain communities, the CDC in 2012 had a survey of kids in Oakland and found that 30% of kids show signs of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's a higher rate than veterans coming back from war, just to FYI. And I don't think those kids live on top of the hill. I think they live where I live in East Oakland or West Oakland. I think they look predominantly like me, you know, or Latino or whatnot. And what does the American Psychological Association say is the go-to for trauma like that? It's expression, paint how you feel, draw what you're thinking about, you know what I'm saying? Dig in. And so expression is so important. And it's so important. And it, you know, I don't think that art's always the first thing to go unless it's an underfunded school. You know what I'm saying? Because we at Hip Hop for Change, we've taught 20,000 kids K through 12. And there's some schools that I walk in there and I'm like, man, I don't even have this technology in my own house. You know, we don't even have this technology at our organization. You know what I'm saying? And there's some schools where these kids don't have anything, so we have to bring everything. Matter of fact, half of our classes are provided for free, since we don't turn down broke students or broke institutions or whatnot. And we have to. Those institutions are the ones that are hurting. Those are the teachers that call us up like, yo, these kids are trying and trying, but they don't have any understanding, and they don't have any access to these services or these resources or whatnot. So arts is always the first thing to go in certain places. I think other communities are doing well, and they're doing fine with art. So, you know, I don't think every artist, every school needs to prioritize that, but I think that as an education system, we know what we're doing. We know who we're underserving. We know that, for example, in Sausalito, Marin County, we know the disparities between Marin City, you know what I'm saying, and the other school. And there's two schools. This one's like predominantly white. This one's predominantly black. And we know that we're still giving money to the rich school, way more than the one that needs it. You know, there was just a study on that in Marin. But the numbers are out there. All we need is that empathy for people to see that this is a bad situation. Maybe we need to make sure there's access to technology and internet and Wi-Fi in the middle of America and in the hood. Maybe we need to prioritize getting the kids that have trauma access to art classes first and foremost. And maybe instead of investing in, you know, police officers who see everything as a nail when they're a hammer, instead of investing in them, we can invest in some counselors and some art teachers so these kids can get this stuff off their chest. And just be, you know, ready to learn. So yeah.
Great. Any follow-up to that, Ava? Nope. Okay, great. Okay, Sophia, what's your second question?
This is a more personal one, but have you learned anything about yourself, your daily rhythms, and your adaptability in this time? And how do you think that learning will influence your art as well as your mental health?
You know, so many people think that with performers, that they see kind of the extroverts in all of us, but I think a lot of people in the arts were actually introverts, and that has been forced to be a certain way. And, you know, even like this, you know, public speaking and talking about myself, that's not something I'm comfortable with doing, but it's important to do. So for me, I'm kind of in what I call introvert hermit heaven. I'm very happy where I am right now. And that's one thing that which is the idea of kind of taking your own space and what it means to recharge And a lot of times when, when kids are at school, when you're around your friends, when you are at work, doing any of that kind of stuff, you expend so much energy. And for me now at this time, it's actually really good to kind of retreat within and learning to be comfortable with yourself, comfortable with your own thoughts, comfortable being vulnerable, and you're right there by yourself. And then it's really, once you realize, because at this time, what is important to you, you can advocate for yourself, you can advocate for your space. And then in that way, you can advocate for your art and whatever you need. And I think that's something that's been really helpful for me.
For me, I think I've enjoyed the time with my daughter. So, I got a new long-term coworker who is just learning how to walk and stomp around the house. So that's beautiful. But adaptability is something that Black people in this country have to learn from jump. You know what I'm saying? So, life seems to be a series of things that come at you and you just make it pass. You got to make it pass. You got to keep it going. You got to, pay this bill. You got to do this job. You got to get this credential. You got to get this person to like you, or you got to, get over, incredibly high hurdles just to keep surviving. So I'm used to that. And I think our community is used to the, the self-determination hustle, making sure that we, I've never really been able to rely on any structure that, is going to keep me, stable and safe and feeling comfortably economically forever, so, we really have to make our own space in these communities, especially in cultures like hip hop. You have to make your own way because there's not many organizations like Hip Hop for Change looking out for us artists, you know what I'm saying? So I'm used to that hustle, and everybody I work with, fortunately, at Hip Hop for Change, like Eric, our event director right here, playing the good music for y'all, like we're all used to just hustling out there. So I think the thing that we're adapting to is just the emotional state, of seeing everybody hurting and trying to keep our head in the game so we can take care of them. That's it right there. So, yeah.
Did you have any follow-up questions, Sophia?
Yeah, just one. Do you guys have any artists or inspirations that you're looking up to right now? Like, are you joining Instagram Lives or interactive media like that? Or what are your icons in this moment?
One that I've really enjoyed is John Krasinski started this thing called Some Good News. I don't know if people have heard about it. He does a weekly thing, and that's one thing that I really enjoy because, again, we were talking with Margaret, which is that we don't ever talk about the good things that are happening. We don't talk about the solidarity between the Asian and the African American community. We don't talk about those things, and the fact that and there's so much good news in the world, and we're living in a time where the loudest voices, the most controversial voices, are the ones who get all the news time. So the fact that for us is to actually be able to focus on the positive and all of that stuff, that for me is actually the most inspiring thing.
I got to keep it in the family. If I'm going to shout out any artist right now, it's going to be our education director extraordinaire, Unlearn the World. This man is fire. He's one of the dopest freestylers, one of the dopest producers, and one of the greatest education artists I've ever met. So if I'm going to shout out any local artist that inspires me, it's going to be Unlearn the World. You can check him out at hiphopforchange.org. He's fire. And we also have a lot of other local artists on our website under featured artists. There's so many crews out here. There's so many dope artists. Ryan Nicole, Daylight, we got Hieroglyphics, Pep Love, Kev Choice, who was about to be on the show at the Asian Art Museum, right? Lyrics Born. We just got people who are rocking. There's so much talent in the Bay. So yeah, but if I'm gonna name one, Unlearn the World. Check him out. Unlearn the World. He's coming out with another album tomorrow.
Well, thank you to our students for your excellent thought-provoking questions, and again to Lily and Khafre for your words of wisdom and your advice for how to keep going. We're now gonna do one more poll before we switch to the Q&A section, and so Jennifer's gonna put up poll number 3 right now. So what are you looking forward to? What are you most excited to attend after the shelter-in-place order is lifted? And we know these aren't very specific kinds of concerts or plays we're listing here. So if there's an other you want to add in the chat, go for it. Let us know what you're really looking forward to arts-wise after this crisis is over. How's it looking, Jennifer, time-wise?
It's a lot of activity. We're getting, we're getting people on the chat side. We're getting a few more responses, maybe another 10 seconds.
Okay.
Ooh, good ones in the chats. I'm gonna do 5 count.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, I'm gonna end the poll now.
Other
All right. So in the poll, we see museum as the #1 answer. And then after that, a concert, that there might be different kinds of concerts, right, that people are looking forward to. So maybe in the chat, can we see, are there hip hop concerts in there, or orchestra concerts, or?
So we got people saying being able to work with other musicians, going to the Japanese garden, going to lectures in libraries, outdoor concerts for free, salsa dancing, woohoo! Seeing their own choir again, and book festivals. Someone wants to see another Hamilton.
Yes. Yeah.
Go to restaurants, heck yes. Clubs. Bob Armstrong, nice shout out to you. You want to look for performance assemblies at your schools and doing one for your outdoor art show at the Golden Gate Park. Awesome.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing all that. We're all looking forward to that, when we can all go to all these arts events and institutions that have given us solace in the past and given us inspiration and have been sources of joy. So yes, those are all things to look forward to. So let's look at the questions in the Q&A. Jennifer, can you read them for us so our panelists can chime in and give their thoughts?
Sure. So we have one question that came in earlier is, how is shelter in place changing the hip hop economy that you were referring to earlier, Khafre? And do you see new opportunities, or is it even more closed off?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Sure. How is the shelter in place changing the hip hop economy that you were referring to earlier? Do you see new opportunities, or is this even more closed off now?
I'd like to say that I see more opportunities. I don't think that a lot of artists have had enough time to kind of explore alternatives, especially given that people actually have to figure out a whole lot of technology and whatnot. So, unfortunately for me and for what I see, it feels like opportunities are just really closed. People are scared. People are fearful. People are hurting. People have no clue what to do. And I think right now a lot of people are just relying on the community because they have no idea who else to rely on. So I see a lot of people doing live DJing and live comedy shows and putting up their Venmo in there. I see people doing Kickstarters and Indiegogo campaigns. But much like healthcare, people shouldn't have to rely on charity. You know what I'm saying? For them to have some efficacy. So it's scary. It's really scary. I don't know anybody who's really figured it out. I don't know anybody who's a hip hop artist for their main source of income who says I'm cool. So yeah, again, we need help.
Okay. I'm gonna skip around on some of these questions. Can any of the panelists shout out their current feel-good song?
Talib Kweli, Just to Get By.
Boogie Wonderland.
Cool.
Unlearn the World, New Rakim.
Do the students have a favorite song right now? Do you mind sharing your favorite song so we can know what you're listening to?
You first, Ava.
I'm really enjoying Rina Sawayama's song Excess.
Cool.
It's more of
Sorry.
an uplifting one, but India Ari, This Too Shall Pass. That's one of my favorites.
I've been listening to Janelle Monáe actually, and I love, I like that. Like that, is that the name of that song? You know the one I'm talking about? Yeah.
You might have to sing it for us, Margaret.
No.
Khafre, let's go.
So here's one that we touched on a little bit more earlier, but this might get more into the heart of it, is what do you do when you have a creative block?
I usually try to find something that inspires emotion in me. You know, a lot of my rap addresses social problems and issues around my community. So for me, it's really easy to turn on the news and get mad. You know what I'm saying? Another thing that I do is I like to write multiple raps at the same time, so I can like step back and whatever I'm mad about that day or whatever I'm inspired about, it might fit into one of my pieces that I'm working on that I have in my Google Drive. So I might just, feel some feelings of happiness and then go get on this inspirational rap, or I might get mad at 45 that night and I might go write this, or some person might look at me like I'm gonna eat their child on the street while I'm walking down a regular sidewalk. So I might go home and write something about that. I have many songs about that type of prejudice, but I think for the most part, for me, it's just finding things that spark my interest, spark my emotions. So reading, studying, just ingesting information and learning new stuff is some of my best things to get away from writer's block.
I couldn't agree more. I think one thing I always talk about is like walking away. When you're really frustrated, you just gotta walk away and take a breath. I talk a lot about this when you're learning music, when you're practicing. If you can't do something 3 times in a row, back away, take a breath, come back to it later. The things that always give me the most inspiration is when it's other mediums, whether it's like Khafre was saying, reading a book, listening to other music, doing other things. It can only inform you. It can only give you more information in terms of just different perspective of how people look at things. And once you have that, I think without realizing it, it's going to somehow percolate into your brain. So for me, it's just about looking elsewhere and just changing your perspective.
And if I could say one thing, and this is not with all art, like it's really important to know when to put your pen down. So Lily, you're 100% right with that. But I also, I've also gone to school. I went to School of the Arts myself in San Francisco. I was a visual artist as well. I minored in ceramics, and sometimes you have projects you need to get done. And so I do want to say that if you do need to get some stuff done, contrived artwork is better than no artwork sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes just making stuff, one of the coolest things I learned from Mrs. Pannone, rest in peace, my art teacher at School of the Arts in San Francisco. She used to have these little 5-minute, like little workouts, like draw something upside down really quick, 5 minutes, and I was like, wow, that's very interesting. Just these little practices that would really get me going. And just like any work, sometimes people hate being at work. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes you still have to go. But yeah, contrived art can still be better than no art if you just need to get something there. So don't be afraid of that. And also don't be afraid to sit down, do what you need to do. And if you need to create something, if you've been wanting to create something for a while, just get something out. It might be cool. You never know. Some of my coolest work I've done when I was just under the gun and didn't think anything was going to come of it.
I just also want to let people know we know our hour, has come, but we are willing to stay on a little longer. I think all our panelists are willing to stay on to answer as many questions as possible. So we understand if you have to go, but if you want to stay, we are going to stay on for a few more minutes. Okay, Jennifer?
A few more questions. Have you found any national initiatives in bringing theater of the oppressed techniques into school-wide curriculums?
Khafre.
No. No, well, actually, yes. Matter of fact, shout out to Marlon Richardson again, Unlearn the World, our education director. He got a chance to work with ACT on a small project combining hip hop with their acting students. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know about any initiatives to bring this type of stuff in that is nationwide, but I know Hip Hop for Change is ready to rock with any, acting crew that wants to get it. Hip hop is easy to stick in any kind of educational structure there is. It's just a cultural expressive form. So I know we're open for it. I have not seen it nationwide though. So there's that.
Well, if I may, so this question came from Kristen Hayes, and they would be love to network with others interested to broaden this. So perhaps something that I'm going to reshare all the links, so perhaps that conversation can continue offline.
Yeah, and just to say, if there's anybody out there who has who does any incentive to want to work with Hip Hop for Change in anything education, or if they need anything hip hop, if you need break dancers, rappers, graffiti artists, or DJs, or just really cool people to come and put hip hop into your work, if you need somebody to write a song for you, or graffiti your office, we've got people that are cool that'll do it for you. And if I could just shamelessly just plug our fundraiser again, because my #1 job is to get these artists supported so they can feed their family. If you go to hiphopforchange.org, hip hop like the culture, FOR change.org, we have a really cool fundraiser down there, and it's going to go 100% towards paying artists to create education content online. If you donate over a certain amount, you get this cool shirt, Hip Hop for Change shirt, that was designed by an 11-year-old that went through our curriculum. So shout out to the hip hop homies that start graffiti that early. So please go to Hip Hop for Change, support our local hip hop education artists and our staff.
Cool, thank you very much. So this was a question that Sophia referenced a little bit earlier, but do you see that this pandemic might lead to new artistic zeitgeist?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, absolutely. I think, people being alone by themselves, it's going to access so many different things. And I think that, the idea of what it means, just what it means to be alone and what it means to be by yourself, the definition is going to change. Hopefully people's ability, one thing I've always been really interested in is weakness versus vulnerability. And I think vulnerability and to be an artist is to be vulnerable. And I think all of those things now, when everyone is by themselves and creating all these things, I think that's definitely going to have a very different shift in terms of our definition of all of those things. Yeah.
One thing I see, especially within the artist community right now, is the inability to rely on the social structures for your well-being. You know what I'm saying? So I see everybody trying to figure out hustle, trying to figure out how to hustle themselves more than they've ever needed to. And that can only be a positive. I mean, not that can only be a positive, but working on how to present yourself, how to brand yourself, how to get your brand out there is something that a lot of people need to work on. And I think this crisis is forcing people to focus on how to put themselves out there. I think the thing that differentiates artists a lot is not just how good they are, you know what I'm saying? But it's how well they can sell themselves, how well they can, for hip hop, it's like, I'm still trying to figure out SoundCloud, but SoundCloud is making people famous, you know what I'm saying? So for a lot of people, they have to figure these things out now more than they've ever needed to. And that might have a really positive impact on people, just to make sure that artists are learning how to be self-reliant and actually how to support themselves. I think a lot of people find it difficult to say my work deserves being seen. You know what I'm saying? I deserve to charge people this much for my efforts. And hopefully this will get people over the hump, because they'll need to charge people what they think they're worth. A lot of the times, especially people in hip hop communities, I have to tell people all the time, man, charge $20 for that CD you worked 2 years on, please. Well, maybe they won't. If they don't want to buy it, forget it. But I don't think that I made enough money selling my CD on the street corner until I was like, my CD's $20. And I remember the first time this guy on Haight Street said, well, that guy said it was $5. His is $5. I said, well, go buy his $5 CD. Mine's dope. It's 20. You should buy it. And he gave me 20 bucks for it. And that day I made more money than I've ever made hustling, on the street. And that's what gave me the belief in myself that, I can brand myself for what I think I'm worth. You have to value yourself. If you don't value yourself, people will put a value on you for you. And that's not going to be anywhere close to what you want it to be. So hopefully hopefully people will learn to value themselves out of necessity at least. And I hope we can learn to value ourselves without crises like this, but hopefully this will help people with that.
The questions, oh, go ahead, one more thing, and then
really to piggyback back off of that was something I alluded to earlier, which is the fact that so many artists, you know, exactly what Khafre was saying, but like people don't think about the fact that musicians, like it's a trade. We work, you know, they don't think about that people have been working on their trade and their craft for years and years and years. So when, you know, when you ask to charge someone for something, you know, you're not charging them for your time to practice, your time to create, your time to mold and things like that. And those are things that nobody thinks about. So I think one thing that a really great conversation is, you know, just alluding to just going back to institutions, whether it's theater companies and any of those places, is what is the artist's worth? Because without the artist and without their craft and all the years that they put in it, these theater companies would not exist. Like these buildings are worth more than the people. And that's something that we did talk about. But then also, I think in the educational system, we're so quick on making this, you know, probably start with the Enlightenment, Charles Darwin, thank you. But, you know, it's about, we have to categorize things. But the thing is in English class, poetry, Shakespeare, all of that is art. And why do we have to keep those things separate? You know, rhythm, hip hop, rhythm, all of that, that's math. You know, if you can't do math, you can't do music. So why can't we start to, you know, incorporate it? Why does everything have to be so separated? And hopefully with the advent of all of this, you know, with this craziness, you know, and hopefully maybe students, it's a little bit more self-driven in terms of their curriculum, what they're learning, maybe that will inspire them to think of things in a different way, or inspire educators to think of what is, you know, these subjects and how to actually cross-pollinate rather than thinking lateral and vertical.
There's actually like self-driven pedagogy instead of trying to shove some fake creativity down somebody. Because when you look about hip hop, there's no, well, I guess now there's, but there really isn't any hip hop schools out there. So how is over half of the kids in the student body in San Francisco hip hop in some way? You know what I'm saying? You know, you think it behoove us to utilize that for, you know, for a vehicle for education. You know what I'm saying? If half of your students are into something, why not use that? Why not? You know, and I think we don't give proper credit to these expressive forms. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not until Hamilton where people are like, oh, I love hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we have to put it in a musical form for people to value that kind of creativity. And I think that's a shame, especially when every major dance studio teaches urban dance. And, you know, every graphic design school is teaching graffiti in some way, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, I think it's just really important. Somebody in the comments said, is there any way we can involve seniors in hip hop? Hip Hop for Change has done that, you know what I'm saying? Everybody wants an opportunity to be creative. And I think that in our society, I think creativity, especially as a means of making money, is looked down upon. You know, everybody wants that safe goal, like, hey, go to college, right? Go get them student loans, go into debt, but go do that, right? That's the safest way. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not downing education. I wanted to be a lifelong college student until Hip Hop for Change got too big and I had to stop that. That's the only reason why I'm not a college student still. But I think that people need to learn to invest in themselves. You know what I'm saying? Whether that's starting a business or whether that's saying, you know what, I'm literally just going to be an artist this year, you know, and I'm going to try this thing one time. I think investing in your own creativity for a year or two is less of a risk than going $80,000 in debt. Just gonna throw that out there. You know what I'm saying? So while I'm raising my daughter, you know, to paint on walls, because that's what students do the first time they get some crayons, right? I'm not gonna stop her. If she tells me I wanna be an artist, I'm gonna buy her a studio. You know what I'm saying? If she says she likes math, man, I'm gonna get her in all the courses. But we have to let these kids drive their own creativity, their own education. You know what I'm saying? Like, we definitely have to force them to do the quadratic formula and learn that if it's not inspiring and exciting to them. But we have to make sure that they're grounded in self-driven pedagogy that they can love. And that always starts with some kind of art form, some type of creativity. We have to let that flourish. Our students will continue to be, you know, ranked last in the world in a lot of different places. So, yeah.
And I think, sorry, just like,
one more
just thinking
yeah.
about, yeah, what Khafre was saying was that, you know, we need to take the elitism out of art as well. You know, I was raised a classical musician, and I was the black sheep there because I did theater. And so half of my faculty hated me. Like I was in faculty, I was in a program, piano performance, 6 girls. And I was literally told to my face, I didn't deserve to be there because I did musical theater. But the thing is like hip hop, exactly, like with Hamilton, and it's the same thing, you know, like musical theater is a part of the folk fabric of the US. If you look at shows like from Hamilton to Rent to Hair, you know, all of that was reflected from the political and social upheaval and all the movements. So the thing is like, you know, right now, yes, people pay all this money to go see a Broadway show, to see Hamilton, but in its essence, it's the people need to reclaim the art. It's the art of the people, right? And at one point, classical music, I mean, Mozart was banned, you know? That was the art of the people. Everybody did it. And we need to take the elitism out of it. I know that as like somebody of, for my parents growing up, you know, it's like my mom used to give me so much grief for listening to pop music. She's like, why aren't you practicing your Mozart and your Bach? You know, and things like that, you know, for immigrants, you know, for immigrant children, where the parents say, sure, you can do the arts, but you have to do the high arts. You can't do the low arts. There's no high or low art. Art is art. And I think that's one thing that we need to talk about as well in school. And it's like, you know, I remember when I was in jazz band, we did everything from, you know, Gershwin to Crazy Train. Like I learned Ozzy Osbourne. I was very lucky to have an amazing music department in my high school. But that's the things we need to do. It's not say this is good art, this is bad art. Art is art. And so, and it's giving your students and giving everybody just free reign of being able to being exposed to everything. And that's the thing I think we need to start talking about as well.
Especially since kids who are hip hop cultured are told to leave their culture at the door of most education institutions. They're told to code switch. They're told that their dialect, which is still traceable to West African grammar structure, is not okay for educational spaces. How much more do we need to tell these kids that they're not okay and they need to change who they are before they're accepted within education? I was fortunate enough to be in jazz band too, Lily. First chair jazz band trumpet, junior year. What's up? But you know, I mean, like to play Night in Tunisia, to play like all these different things, as opposed to playing just regular classical band, I was like, okay, I can do this. You know what I'm saying? Because it was funky, it was moving, you know? And that got me really excited into it because that was my culture. That's what my father played. That's what I heard growing up and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So to use culture as a vehicle for education, like to not do that is malfeasance. It's a dereliction of duty for our culture. And let me just point it out, it's not everybody's culture. It's people, it's minority communities. Like, why aren't they doing this? You know, I was fortunate enough to go to a Montessori school until 5th grade, until my parents couldn't afford it anymore. And there was every instrument around the world there. You know what I'm saying? So I got to play with things that I didn't even know how to pronounce them. I learned to read by sewing together a book. I learned to count by making pictures with beans and stuff like that, you know? This type of like, you know, bringing disparate forms of education and different cultures together to facilitate, you know, STEM. It makes a lot of sense. You know, you want to teach, you see these kids who are walking down the street and they're rapping to themselves, they're beatboxing and whatnot. Like, we can use that. If you look at RZA from Wu-Tang Clan, he has a program called Science Genius, where in New York, they were having kids in science programs, instead of writing reports, they were making raps. And then they were battling, right? So now these kids are like, yo, I'm coming with the dopest science rap. I'm gonna take you out. And that's using their culture. They love rapping. And you know, the kid who won the inter-school battle was this young kid who was equating momentum and force and friction with being a young Black kid trying to make it in life. You know, I remember the quadratic formula because I learned it in a song. You know what I'm saying? This stuff makes a lot of sense to me. But what's crazy is that I have to fight so hard for this to be taken seriously within the academic, you know, space. You know, I had a dean, a Black woman, by the way, a dean of a school here in Oakland say, you know, these kids don't need hip hop, they need opera. And I was just like, first off, do you know what opera is about? That is not PG subject matter at all right there. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you know, and you know, these kids need what they're inspired about. You know what I'm saying? I also got a chance to work with another group that was trying to create a festival for kids in their community. And the first thing they said is, hey, can you tell me how to pull these kids' pants up? And that's the first question I was asked. And I was like, yo, if that's the first thing that you're focused on, then I can't help you. If your first thing isn't to give that young kid a hug and say, you're worthy, man, and what do you want to do? Then I can't help you. If your first thing is trying to change this kid because something you think is not right, and mind you, I have a belt on and I do not sag my pants because I'm not with that. But that's not going to be the first thing when I go reach a young kid to try to mentor them to have belief and self-worth in themselves. I'm not going to be like, yo, you're wrong. You know, if you want a kid to pull his pants up, teach him how to run a business. You know what I'm saying? If you want a kid to pull his pants up, teach him how tactically inappropriate it is to have loose pants around when you need it. You know what I'm saying? Don't just down somebody. Don't just tell them they're wrong. And I think that's what our education system is doing. That's why I think Hip Hop for Change's class is so popular, because these kids, they don't ever want us to leave. And that's just a testament to the fact that we need things like Hamilton, right? We need things like hip hop. We need jazz band. You know, all kids should go through jazz band. We should have jazz band before we have any other kind of band. You know what I'm saying? And that's just me though, so.
Can I just jump in real quick to follow up on some of the threads you've all been sharing with us, because I wanted to follow up on the idea of people knowing their self-worth, knowing what they're worth, giving artists credit for all the time and effort and study they put into their craft. But for parents right now, I'm wondering, for kids who really want to pursue careers in the arts, their parents might be telling them right now, but look at what's happening with the economy right now. Look at what's happening with the pandemic. Why not do something more practical? Why not do something that'll be recession proof or something like that? And do you have any words or thoughts on that? What can keep these kids going when the world seems to be telling them, no, arts shouldn't be valued right now because there are more important things going on? Response?
I mean, I think that's just ridiculous. I think I mean, I understand trying to deal with probabilities and saying, hey, this is the accepted way, this is practical. But I mean, if this COVID-19 crisis hasn't taught us anything, practicalities is not something we can bank on being around forever, right? It's just not. I want to make sure that my daughter knows that she should invest in herself over anything. You know what I'm saying? You're either going to build your dreams or you're going to build somebody else's dreams in life. There's almost no in between in that. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you can build your parents' dreams and get that nice, safe career. But you know, I don't think right now in this society, anything is safe. You know, like most people with, degrees, they're not doing what they, got into debt for or whatnot. And again, I'm not advocating people not go to college. College is where you learn so much. College is where you learn how to actually learn for the first time, because our K through 12 system sometimes is not really teaching creativity. You know what I'm saying? So I do advocate going to college, but what I advocate more than anything is for people to take a chance on their own dreams, whatever those dreams may be. You want to be a biologist? Yeah, by all means, go to college, do your thing. If you want to be a rapper, by all means, rap and do everything that's that. And, it took me a couple of years of being really broke when I started Hip Hop for Change, and everybody told me, bro, you're stupid. Like that's how how's that gonna work? Well, not everybody, but there was a large percentage of people, I'm not gonna name any names, family members, some family members that said, hey, maybe you should go back to school, maybe you should get a real job, hey, this and that. And some people I just had to say, look, I'm gonna invest in my passion and my dreams right now, and if this doesn't work, I can go back, maybe, you know what I'm saying? And so sometimes you really just have to block out doubters. Sometimes you have to do that. And if there's anything I could ever say to anybody out here listening, and I don't care if you're K through 12 or if you're 85 years old, if you want to start skateboarding or painting or rapping, you can do that. And you can do it anytime you want to do that. There's no time too late to start, being creative. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to invest in that, 5 years from now, you could be the executive director of a nonprofit that teaches little homies to do art. You can do it, you know what I'm saying? But you have to be willing to invest in yourself and believe in yourself to do that.
That's such a great answer. I mean, we could leave it there. I think, having grown up as an immigrant with immigrant parents, I know the perspective is a little bit different, but also I think we have to recognize that everyone's definition and spectrum of success is very different as well, and between parents and between kids. And that's one thing, I think if you put in the hard work, you understand that especially in the arts, the gumption that you need to actually be successful, to make a name for yourself, to make money is probably going to be even harder than just going to college and like regurgitating and taking tests and things like that. You need to have a thick skin. You need to be okay. The vulnerability comes back, right? You need to be okay with rejection. You need to keep working. You need to hustle, all those kind of things. But I think there's a few things. I think I saw on the panelists or on the chat, someone wrote, plan A, plan B. And I think I can only speak for my parents, but I know a lot of immigrant parents, they immigrated to the West to give their kids a better life. And perhaps in certain cultures, the arts is not success. That's not true. There are very different ways. There are very different paths to be in the arts now. You could be in arts admin, right? You can actually help facilitate the arts, right? You could be in fundraising. You could go into marketing and then go into the arts. There are many ways of doing the arts. And then there are the artists. And I think, there is something to be said about being fulfilled. And I think the amount of stories I've heard of kids who have gone through law school, gone through med school, and then have literally given their certificate to their parents, wasted 6 to 8 years and be like, great, this is yours. And now they go and then they go become artists. Like, that is a waste of time. And I think one thing is that for parents is to keep an open mind, right? And be realistic about, what their kids want to do. And then for kids is for you to say, great, I know what you want for me is stability, and so have plan A, plan B, have all those things and say, like, this is what I want to do. But if not, maybe this or maybe that. And it's all about communication. And I think, in a lot of minority communities, I think both, African-American and Chinese and, talking about feelings is seen as a weakness. Talking about what you want to do, seeing as a weakness, and then kids go, well, you don't understand me, and then that's it, right? And I went through that with my parents, and I think it's actually about communication. It's about listening. It's about looking at it from everybody's point of views, and for parents, looking at it from your children's point of view, and knowing that you're never going to let them fall, but to actually elevate them. And if it doesn't work out, the thing is, like, one thing to always remember, like, the art helps create empathy. Any of the performing arts, anything in the arts. So the arts can only help feel them to make them better, more empathetic and sympathetic doctors and lawyers and all these things. So especially when they are just still in school, and if that's what they want to pursue and that's something they want to experiment with, why not let them do that if they can keep up their grades? My only thing is to, like, not deter them from it, because you never know where it's going to go.
Yep, especially with hip hop, y'all. Like, I don't know. I just like to throw that out there because, I was just talking to a lady 3 days ago who has a great nonprofit, but she was talking about her son. She was mortified when she heard how much he wanted to rap. You know what I'm saying? At first, but then she saw how determined he was. You know what I'm saying? How focused he was and how much he was passionate. And so she just had to really trust in her son. She was like, I don't want you to go down that route. And he had to say, Mom, I don't talk about women like that. Mom, I'm a good kid. I'm just rap. This is a form of expression. There's always that conversation, you know what I'm saying? And yeah, minority parents, I don't know how, white parents do this, but I know Black parents are like, yo, I just want my kid to survive, right? It is survival, like, My mom was like, yo, do you have health care? I need you to have health care. I don't care what you're doing, just have some health care. So our parents are in survival mode, and that's so understandable, but that's why it's really important for us as, as children, as kids of our parents to be like, yeah, I get that, but I also need to be in thriving mode. You know what I'm saying? You can't just live. You've got to thrive. And a lot of the times, especially with hip hop culture, hip hop, one of the the tenets of hip hop is a self-affirmation, a self-affirming belief in your own worth, right? That's in the DNA of hip hop. And for a lot of our young kids, hip hop is the first time they even get to experience that sense of, man, I'm worth it, right? Man, I'm strong, right? When they do that one breakdance move and land it for the first time, they're like, oh, snap, man, right? And they get that high, they get that dopamine, that serotonin and whatnot, you know, or some kids get to like rap or whatnot, and they're trying to have that audacious spirit for the first time through that rap. Hip hop is some of the first times these kids get really confronted with the need for them to toot their own horn. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I just want kids to, you know, I'm not gonna say don't listen to your parents. Your parents are right. Have a plan B. You know what I'm saying? Have a plan C and a plan D, right? My plan D was being a bus driver. You know what I'm saying? That was just a plan D too. But also go for that plan A. Like that is the only option, you know, for you to be the happiest in life. Because man, you know, I can't tell you how good it is to sit in this office with my coworkers, Eric, Marlon, Latoya, Hema, every day and have people who are like-minded, who believe in the same things, who have the same type of creative spirit. Like we don't have to code switch. We don't have to like, I dress like this every single day. You know what I'm saying? It's so important. And especially within art, you can create your own space. You know, you can create your own space that respects you for who you are. So I just encourage people to pursue their dreams and make their own space, you know, in life, you know, make your own space, make your own economic benefit that you can be yourself through.
Thank you both for ending with those inspiring words that are going to, this is just what we needed. I think this whole conversation, I think has really helped a lot of people to think through how they can keep going during this crisis, and especially how students can keep going through this crisis. So thank you so much to everyone. I apologize, it's time for us to wrap up. As much as we would love to keep answering questions, we aren't going to be able to stay on. So thank you everybody for being here. Lily Ling, Khafre Jay, Sophia Shen, Ava Sosnoff, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And I want to thank Jennifer for being our pilot through this whole show. Thanks so much for keeping everything going. Eric Saz from Hip Hop for Change, thank you for the music today. I want to thank some other people too. And actually I want Jennifer to put up one more link before we go, the link to the SFUSD Arts Festival, because we want people to be able to see all the student artwork that would have been on display if we had been able to hold the festival. And so as one last link to share out with all of you, in addition to all the links to the organizations we've talked about today, check out the SFUSD Arts Festival, the virtual display, the virtual gallery. So you can take a look at all the beautiful, inspiring artwork the kids did. But thank you also to Deb Clearwaters, Director of Education and Interpretation at the Asian Art Museum. Thank you to Catherine Thielen Burke from VAPA at SFUSD for all your hard work on the festival and being such a great partner. Thank you to Trana Patel for helping us work with the interns. Thank you to John O'Shea, our tech support at the museum, for all his words of wisdom and advice for helping us get this together. And I know I'm probably forgetting some things. I'm just gonna look at my list real quick. And
Ava and Sophia.
Can
we get a round of applause for
everybody?
Margaret,
Jennifer, is there
too?
anyone I forgot?
Yeah,
Margaret.
Hey, Margaret.
So thank you again to everyone for being part of this. We did record this, so we'll put the link up on our education website, education.asianart.org, on our teacher Facebook page, which is Asian Art Museum for Teachers. Check out the Hip Hop for Change website, please. And I know the EduHam link was also put in the chat. So, and thanks to the students. Good luck with finishing up the school year. Good luck with everything you're pursuing, and thank you for being here and taking time out of your schedule and all the things you're dealing with. So thanks to everybody.
Thanks so much for having us.
Oh, of course, yeah. Okay,
On that, I'm gonna stop recording.
yeah, have a wonderful evening, and please keep in touch, everybody. You can chime in on our Facebooks. We'd love to hear from you. Take care.
Peace.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.